and welcome to Daily News Simplified, the why, what and how of newspaper reading. Today we will discuss the articles displayed on the screen from the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 5th November 2018, and the timestamping for the same has been provided in the description box below. So let us start our discussion for the day. Now before starting today's discussion, let us take up a question from the mains examination which was asked in the General Studies paper 1. So today we will take up this question which is related to the Indian Regional Navigational Satellite System or the IRNSS. And the question asked us to identify why is there a need for the development of IRNSS. And secondly, the question asks how does it help in navigation. So it was a pretty straightforward question that was asked in the mains examination and was also covered in the DNS and Focus magazine. Now one important thing to notice here is that if you go through the preliminary examination paper of 2018, you will find a question related to the IRNSS. And this question was related to its technical aspects. And if you remember, we had discussed this question in the Daily News Simplified of 18th June 2018. And the IRNSS was covered in the DNS of 11th April 2018, just before the preliminary examination. So the questions that are asked in the preliminary examination provide us with an important cue for the mains examination as well. For example, this question was asked in the preliminary as well as mains examination. Similarly, if you remember, there was a question related to two-state solution which was related to Israel. And in the mains examination, there was a question about Indo-Israel relations. So the questions that are asked in preliminary examination give us a direction about mains examination as well. And some of the topics that appear in the preliminary examination also become important for us from mains exam point of view. Now let us discuss the second aspect of this question first. And this question reads, how does it help in navigation? So regarding the importance of IRNSS for navigation, we have discussed this in DNS of 11th April 2018. And this reads that it is a set of satellites which can together provide a regional positioning system. So the IRNS system of satellites provides us with regional positional system. Second is that it transmits signal for accurate determination of position, navigation and time. So all the three aspects of accurate navigation are covered by IRNSS. Thirdly, the system is designed to give position accuracy which is better than 20 meters to its users. So that is why it helps in precise positioning and precise navigation. Further, it can also service regions extending up to 1500 kilometers around India's boundary. So this is another important aspect of this navigation system. So all these points could have been used in your answer. Now regarding the first part of this question, it reads, why is IRNSS needed? So addressing this aspect of the question, you could have used the following points. The first is that it is important for army operations. And you might be knowing that India did not have its own GPS system during the Kargil war. And the army had to depend on the GPS system which is provided by the United States of America. However, the GPS did not have access to the locations around the Kargil. And that is why it became difficult for army to carry out operations. So the IRNSS was required for conducting the army operations successfully. Second is that the IRNSS will provide better navigation in strategically important areas. And these are particularly Jammu and Kashmir and the northeastern part of India. So it will provide better navigation in strategically important areas like Jammu and Kashmir and Northeast. The third aspect is related to technological sovereignty, which means that India will not be dependent on the GPS system of US or the GLONASS of Russia. And finally, it will also help in disaster management. For example, during the earthquake in Jammu and Kashmir in the year 2005, such a system would have helped in better disaster management or relief works. So this becomes important for us from disaster management point of view as well. So these are some of the aspects which you could have used in answering this question. Now these aspects of IRNSS were also covered in the month of May in the Focus magazine. So this article in the Focus magazine provided that the IRNSS provides for two types of services. And the first is the standard positioning service. And it is meant to be used by all the users of IRNSS. However, there was a special service which is known as restricted service. And it is an encrypted service provided only to authorized users, for example, military and security agencies. And we have just discussed that IRNSS is important for military to carry out its operations. So the restricted service aspect of the IRNSS will help military in carrying out various war-related operations successfully. Further, this article talks about the applications of IRNSS. And regarding the application of IRNSS, it provides navigation for terrestrial, aerial and marine areas. This means that it covers all the three areas of navigation. Further, it is helpful in disaster management. It can also help in vehicle tracking and fleet management. Further, it will help in terrestrial navigations and will aid the hikers and travelers. Further, it has features like visual and voice navigation, which will help the drivers in better traveling and positioning. Further, this infographic provides that each satellite has 3 atomic clocks, and these will provide accurate locational data. So it is another important aspect of IRNSS which could have been used in your answer. So it was a pretty straightforward question, and the points that were discussed in the DNS and the Focus magazine could have been used to answer this question. Now let us start our discussion for today's newspaper. Now this article on page number 5 talks about the appearance of greater flamingos at the Hope Island after a period of 25 years. So this will form a part of the preliminary examination syllabus under the topic environment, and also we will look at the location of Hope Island from geography point of view. So in this article we will look at the location of the Hope Island. We will also look at the conservation status of greater flamingos. So first let us look at what is a greater flamingo, where they are found, and what is the conservation status of a greater flamingo. So these flamingos inhabit shallow water bodies, for example saline lagoons, salt pans, large saline or alkaline lakes, etc. And regarding the location where they are found, they are present in East Africa, West Africa, Southern Europe, and coastal regions of India. And in general, they are very widely distributed across the planet. Now, regarding the conservation status of greater flamingo, it is currently marked as least concern in the IUCN's Red List category. And regarding the protection of greater flamingo in India's Wildlife Protection Act of 1972, it is protected under the Schedule 4 of the Wildlife Protection Act. Now, regarding the schedules of Wildlife Protection Act, you should know that the animals which are protected under Schedule 1 have the most protected category. And under these, the prescribed penalties are the highest. And you should know that under Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act, important animals like tiger and lions are protected. So similarly, there are animals and birds which are protected in the Schedule 3 and 4 of the Wildlife Protection Act. However, the penalties in the Schedule 3 and 4 are lower as compared to the penalties under Schedule 1 and 2 of the Wildlife Protection Act. And regarding Schedule 5, you should know that the animals which are considered as vermin are listed in the Schedule 5. And regarding vermin, you should know that these are generally those animals or birds which are considered harmful for the crops or agriculture. And these vermin are also those animals which generally spread disease into the human beings. One important fact regarding the schedules of Wildlife Protection Act is that the Schedule 6 protects plants and its derivatives as well. So simply the Wildlife Protection Act does not just protect the animals, but it also protects plants and its derivatives which are covered under the Schedule 6. So these are few important facts related to the Wildlife Protection Act which are important from your exam point of view as well. And you should know that in the year 2017 in the preliminary examination, there was a question related to the Schedule 1 of Wildlife Protection Act. So this becomes important from exam point of view. Now let us look at the location of the Hope Island. And it is located as a part of the Kuringa Wildlife Sanctuary, and it is located in Andhra Pradesh. So this location is important for us from preliminary examination point of view. And regarding the Hope Island, you should know that it has been formed in the 18th century from the sediment outflow carried by waters of river Kuringa. And this Kuringa river is a distributary of Godavari river. And in the map you can see the location of Hope Island, which is located off the coast of Andhra Pradesh, and it is a part of the Kuringa Wildlife Sanctuary. Now another important fact is that it is an important nesting site of olive ridley turtles. So these are few facts related to Hope Island which should be remembered from your exam point of view. Now after going through the points that we have discussed, you should try and answer this question from preliminary examination point of view and put your answer in the comment section. With this, let us move on to the next article. Now this article on page number 14 is in news because of an important water management system that has ensured access to water for farmers suffering from drought in the Coimbatore district of Tamil Nadu. So this water management system is important for us from preliminary examination point of view, and it will form a part of the preliminary examination syllabus under the topic General Issues on Environment. Now this Bhungroo water management system has been listed as a lighthouse activity under the Momentum for Change initiative of UNFCCC or United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. So let us try to understand some of the basics of the Bhungroo water management system from our preliminary examination point of view. Now under the Bhungroo water management system, the excess rainfall water is injected underground. So you can see in the diagram that the excess rainwater is injected in the underground layers. And this water which is stored underground can be used during dry spells. Now one condition is that the land on which this unit is formed needs a slight tilt or a gradient so that the water can be accumulated at one point. And this water gets collected underground in what is called as the lenses. So the water gets collected in the form of lens. Now, another condition for development of such water management system is that the subsoil strata, which is the strata just below the topsoil, should have a coarse sand soil layer, which means that this layer should not be permeable so that the water does not percolate beyond this layer. And during the dry spells, this water is pumped out from these Bhungroo water management system and can be used locally for irrigation or other purposes. Now let us look at the significance of this water management system. So during monsoons or during normal rains, the system would artificially recharge aquifers by adding rainwater to underground water reservoirs. And this underground water reservoir can be used by farmers in the non-monsoon seasons, which means that this water can be used during the dry spells. Now, another importance is that during flash floods or the floods which occur during a very short period of time, there is a lot of water logging in such areas. And due to the presence of water logging or the standing water, the soil fertility is reduced and it causes deposits of soil on the topsoil. So this decreases the fertility and increases the salinity. This is because the water gets logged or stagnated over the topsoil. Now under this water management system, the water does not get logged or stagnated. And as a result, the salinity does not increase on the topsoil. So this system is beneficial for decreasing the salinity of the topsoil. Now further, as the rainwater gets mixed with the underground saline water, it brings down the salinity of the groundwater as well and making it fit for the agricultural use. This means that it helps in decreasing the salinity of topsoil as well as it decreases the salinity of underground water. So these are two important facts from our exam point of view. Now third important aspect of the Bhungroo water management system is that it is localized to a particular village or a region, and thus this decreases the reliance of the farmers on the river water. And we know that most of the river water is now getting diverted towards urban areas of cities. So they don't have to rely now on the river water and they can use the water that has been stored in the Bhungroo system at a village or a regional level. Now, as mentioned earlier, the Bhungroo water management system has been listed in the lighthouse activities of the Momentum for Change, which is an initiative of UNFCCC. So let us understand some basic facts related to Momentum for Change. And you should know that in the year 2018, a question was asked in the preliminary examination related to Momentum for Change. Climate Neutral Now is an initiative launched by. So the correct answer in this case was that it is an initiative of UNFCCC Secretariat. So the Momentum for Change is an initiative of the United Nations Climate Change Secretariat to throw light on the activities underway across the globe that are moving the world towards a highly resilient and low carbon future. And further, it recognizes and highlights and throws light on the most inspiring and transformational mitigation and adaptation activities. And these activities are listed under the lighthouse activities of Momentum for Change. Now, after going through this article, you should try and answer this question from your preliminary examination point of view and put your answer in the comment section. With this, let us move on to the next article. Now, this article on page number 12 reads that the South Pacific island of New Caledonia has voted against independence from France. And the New Caledonia voted against its independence from France under a referendum which was part of the decolonization process. And you should know that during a referendum, the whole electorate votes in terms of their approval or disapproval of the proposal. Now, the location of this New Caledonia is important for us from preliminary examination point of view. And you should note that it will fall in the preliminary examination syllabus under the topic Current Events of International Importance. And previously, questions have been asked based on places in news and their location. So that is why this location becomes important for us from preliminary examination. And you should notice that the location of New Caledonia is in South Pacific and it lies close to the eastern coast of Australia and it is a part of France. So both these facts are important for us from exam point of view. Now if you go through the question which was asked in 2018, it reads, regions sometimes mentioned in news and the country to which they belong. The first in this line is the Catalonia and the country is Spain. Now the Catalonia was in news because a referendum was held for independence from Spain. And in this regard, the Catalonia voted in favor of independence from the country of Spain. So this was in news. So similarly, this can be a very important location from your exam point of view. If you go through the other options, it reads that Crimea and Hungary. Now this is an incorrect option. By this, you can easily eliminate the options A and the option D. However, we know that the first is correct because Catalonia is a part of Spain. So the only option that remains is C, that is 1 and 3. So with this, let us move on to the next article. Now the articles on page number 1 and 10 are related to the protests that have erupted after the killing of the man-eating tigress Avni. However, what is important for us from exam point of view and will fall under the preliminary examination syllabus under the topic Indian geography is the location where this tigress was killed. So this man-eating tigress was killed by the forest officials in the Tipeshwar Wildlife Sanctuary, and it is located in the Yavatmal district of Maharashtra. So besides New Caledonia, which we have learned in the last article, the location of Tipeshwar Wildlife Sanctuary is also important for us from exam point of view. So you should know about this location. With this, let us move on to the next article. Now this article on page number 14 is related to a tussle between the central government and the Reserve Bank of India. And in this, the central government wants a share from the RBI's reserves. Now some of the aspects that we will discuss in this article will fall in the mains examination syllabus, while some of them will fall under the preliminary examination syllabus under the topic economic development. Now the ongoing contentious issue between RBI and government is over the transfer of surplus profits from RBI to the government. And the government in this regard believes that the reserves with the RBI are quite high. And accordingly, the government is demanding that RBI should transfer higher share from its profits. Now on the contrary, RBI has been opposing it on the grounds that it needs sufficient amount of reserves to tide over unforeseen circumstances in future. Now the RBI wants to keep this share from the surplus profit with itself because it wants to use it during the important or unforeseen circumstances. Now in this context, let us understand what constitutes RBI's assets and reserves, and what should be the ideal size of RBI's reserves. Now regarding the assets of RBI, in the year 2017 and 18, it was about rupees 36 lakh crores. Now all the constituents of the RBI assets are important for us from exam or preliminary examination point of view. So you should know that the RBI assets include the gold, banknotes, coins that are kept in the vault of RBI, the foreign currency assets. Further, it includes government bonds, treasury bills and special oil bonds. And finally, these includes loans and advances to the central and state governments and loans and advances to the commercial cooperative banks, NABARD and others. And these constituents of the assets are important for us from exam point of view. Now from the assets that we have just discussed, RBI earns certain profits. So the reserves of the RBI are built through transfers from the annual surpluses in the profit and loss account of RBI. So the reserves are the transfers from the annual surpluses in the terms of profits that RBI has earned over its assets. And we know that these assets include the loans that the RBI advances, also the gold and the foreign currency assets. Now from these surpluses and profits, RBI transfers some of the amount into these three funds. And these are the contingency fund, the asset development fund and the currency and gold revaluation account. And some part of these profits is given to center as a part of dividend. So presently the RBI has been transferring some amount of its profit to the center as a dividend. And the controversy is related to the amount that the RBI should transfer to the center. Now presently the reserve with the RBI is around 10 lakh crore. And this is about 28.92% of its total assets. Now let us understand about the functions of these three funds. So the first fund is the contingency fund. And the RBI keeps this fund in order to meet the unexpected and unforeseen contingencies. And these include depreciation in the value of securities and the risk which arise out of monetary or exchange rate policy operations. So this is a buffer fund which RBI keeps with itself to handle the unexpected and unforeseen contingencies. And the second is the asset development fund. And from this fund, the RBI invests in its subsidiaries and associate institutions and also meets its internal capital expenditure. So RBI uses these funds to further create its assets. And the third fund is the currency and gold revaluation account. And this account or fund is meant to cover the market risk which arise due to exchange rate fluctuations and also movement in the prices of gold. So these are the functions of these three funds which RBI keeps with itself. Now the present controversy is related to the amount that the RBI should keep with itself as reserves. So in this context, various committees have been created and they have provided certain suggestions. The first committee was the Usha Thorat committee, which was created in the year 2004. And it examined the question of ideal size of RBI's reserves. And finally, it came out with the conclusion that reserves should be around 18%, which are presently 28.92% of the total assets of RBI. However, after the Usha Thorat committee, another committee was created in the year 2013 and 14. And the name of this committee was Malegaon Committee. Now, this committee recommended that the balance in the contingency reserve and the asset development fund are in excess of the buffers which are required by the RBI. And there was no need to make any more transfer to these funds. So simply this committee recommended that no more transfers or no more money should be diverted to contingency reserve and the asset development fund. And in this regard, the committee recommended that the entire surplus should be transferred to the central government. So, in accordance with the Malagam committee, the RBI decided to transfer the entire surplus that it earns over its assets to the government. And it did not transfer any of the amount from its profits to the reserve funds, that is the contingency reserve and the asset development fund. And since then, the RBI has been transferring its entire surplus to the center, and this year the surplus that was transferred was about rupees 50,000 crores. So regarding the ideal size of reserves that RBI should keep with itself, the Usha Thorat committee recommended that it should be around 18% of the total assets of RBI. However, the Malagam committee recommended that the entire amount of the profits from the assets should be transferred to the central government, and RBI should not transfer any amount from these profits to its reserve funds. So in accordance with the Malagam committee, the RBI has been transferring entire surplus to the central government. Now let us understand what is the present issue. So in this regard, the RBI says that the currency and the gold revaluation assets have now been reduced to about 21.81% of the total assets, and the contingency reserves have now been reduced to 6.41% only. So now the RBI says that the buffer is now inadequate if one goes by the Malagam committee recommendations of 2013 and 14. However, now the government has been asking for a transfer of higher share from the RBI surplus. So this is a contentious issue between the RBI and the central government. So in this regard, this article recommends that a committee should be set up to look into all the aspects of RBI's balance sheet, and it should suggest a safe buffer in reserves and set out a fair method of sharing the reserves. Now, after going through this article, you should try this question from your preliminary examination point of view and put your answer in the comment section. And you should also attempt this question from your mains examination point of view. With this, let us move on to the next article. Now, this article on page number 5 talks about the special code for POCSO Act. And it states that these special courts are helping in speedy trial of cases related to children. So this will form a part of the General Studies paper 2 under the topic Mechanism, Laws and Institutions for Vulnerable Sections. Previously in the year 2015, there was a question related to National Human Rights Commission. Again in the year 2016, there was a question related to the provisions of National Child Policy. And in the year 2017, there was a question related to National Commission for Women. So this shows that questions related to various commissions which have been created for the betterment of vulnerable sections are important for us from exam point of view. So in this article, we will try to understand the main provisions of the POCSO Act, and we will also learn about some facts related to the National Commission for the Protection of Child Rights. Now this POCSO Act, or the Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act, was enacted in the year 2012. And it was enacted in order to address the heinous crimes of sexual abuse and sexual exploitation of children. And it was enacted at the behest of Ministry of Women and Child Development. So some important provisions of POCSO Act are that it aims to protect children from the offences of sexual assault, sexual harassment and pornography. This act also provides for the protection of children from the acts committed by police officers and members of armed forces or any other public servant. Further, this act provides for the constitution of special courts for speedy trial of offences involving children. And the present news article is related to this provision of the POCSO Act. And the article says that the constitution of these special courts has led to speedy trial in many of the cases. Now, another feature of the POCSO Act is that it provides the definition of a child. And according to this act, a child is any person below the age of 18 years. Now, the section 44 of the POCSO Act provides for the constitution or the creation of National Commission for the Protection of Child Rights. And now let us learn about the important functions of this National Commission for the Protection of Child Rights, or NCPCR. So the first and foremost and the most important function of NCPCR is to monitor the implementation of POCSO Act 2012. It further monitors the designation of special courts by state governments. Now the NCPCR also monitors the appointment of public prosecutors by state government. And regarding the public prosecutor, you should know that a public prosecutor is a person who conducts the criminal proceedings on behalf of the state government. So monitoring the appointment of such public prosecutor is also a responsibility of NCPCR. Further, the NCPCR monitors the formulation of guidelines by the state governments in respect of POCSO Act. And these guidelines are created by the state governments for the non-governmental organizations, professionals and experts like psychiatrists and social workers, and these persons are associated with the child for the trials under the POCSO Act. Further, the NCPCR also monitors the design and implementation of modules which are created for training the police personnel, especially those police personnel who are involved in the implementation of POCSO Act and who are handling the child victims. Further, the Commission collects information and data on its own from relevant agencies regarding the cases of sexual abuse. And finally, the Commission assesses the implementation of the provisions of this Act. And they include a report in a separate chapter in its annual report to the Parliament. So it sends an annual report about the implementation of the POCSO Act to the Parliament. So these are some of the provisions of the POCSO Act and some of the functions of the National Commission for the Protection of Child Rights. And some of the points mentioned here can be used in answering the questions in mains examination. With this, let us move on to the next article. With this, let us conclude our discussion for the day and wish you all a very happy Diwali, and let us move on to the question for the day.